Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Get Texty podcast. I am one of your lovely hosts, Joel Guthrie, and I am back for episode 3. Sorry, I missed episode 2, but Brendan and Tanner held down the fort for us and talk about how we can keep leveraging text marketing for your business. And on this episode, we're going to jump back in another home team episode. We're just trying to keep and lay the foundation for you guys of, okay, you know what this text marketing is, you know the value of it. Okay, but what if you have a list? What if you don't have a list? How do you grow a list? How do you engage that list? And we're going to talk about all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the ball over to Mr. Brendan Hitzman. We will jump right in. Brendan?
What's up, guys? Yeah, of course. So Tanner, we're talking about a list, and I think sometimes let's go ahead and dive into what is a list. It's a subscriber list, right? So let's talk about just the definition around what is a list and what does it mean and what is it for?
Yeah, I love the putting it into very, very simple viewpoint on this. Yeah, I mean, a list, just a subscriber list. So it's essentially an audience group of people that are opting to receive content from a business. I think the main difference between a text list and a email list is mainly around like compliance and some other jargon things, but for the most part, it's really the exact same thing. People are just opting to receive content, offers, information, alerts, etc., from your business for whatever reason.
So for the people back at home and for my reminder, there is a pretty drastic difference as far as the regulations go in an opt-in list for email compared to text, in the sense that people can really get away with pulling cold emails through some of these scraping tools, through some of these enrichment tools for email. That's not okay in text marketing, right? They have to physically opt in. So talk a little bit about that difference.
Yeah, correct. I think the first important thing to mention is texting has much greater consequences to unsolicited messaging in comparison to email. So TCPA, which is actual law, passed years and years and years ago, stands for Tele-Consumer Protection Act. Most people often associate that with just unsolicited phone calls. So just whatever, a call center or some type of business calling you to try and sell you something, market. I mean, there's obviously a lot of phishing and fraud that happens with that stuff too, but that was the main reason why TCPA was originally enacted. But something that is included within TCPA, and it's clearly defined, is text message marketing and how businesses can use it. What are the basic rules and regulations with it? The primary thing that TCP outlines is that you have to have expressed opt-in consent from the consumer, or anyone that you're trying to send a text message out to, whether it's promotional, it's informational, etc. It has to be optional, and you have to get express consent. What is express consent? Most people are probably going to raise an eyebrow at that. It's actually really simple. It's simply just putting the proper T's and C's where you're asking for their phone number. So, an example, by you giving me your phone number, you're opting in to receive auto-recurring, text messages for XYZ purposes. So that's where there's a little bit of customization for a business that just goes to their use case. Like, are they sending out marketing text messages, promotional? Is it informational? Like, what's the purpose of it? Just giving them a heads up. And then just followed by a few other basic T's and C's, such as message data rates may apply. You can reply help for help at any time, stop, end, and so on. So it's really basic T's and C's. Any business that you see out there in the world doing text marketing should have that wherever they are asking for people to opt in and they're using it for their text marketing. Sometimes you'll come across businesses that do not do that. Now, the main downside of that is you're putting yourself at a steep legal risk. So TCPA, if you violate that, you're technically subjective to fines for each individual instance. So that could be for every single unsolicited text message that you send out to a customer, could be fined anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per incident. And if you think about that, that's per incident, which again, this sounds crazy, but this is that steep legal jump from something like email to text that you get held accountable for, and it's per incident means like per text message. So like, for example, years ago, company, and they're kind of the poster child for TCPA, Jiffy Lube, They essentially just took all of their customers' data from point of sale system, from what I recall, and just started blasting out text messages to them. There was no opt-in, didn't follow TCPA, et cetera. And then they got hit with millions and $1 million class action lawsuit for every single unsolicited text message they sent out. So there are very steep repercussions from a legal perspective if you don't just follow the really simple basic practice. So you'll get a lot of people that raise their eyebrow and it kind of scares them off and like they don't even want to partake in it because of the risk. But it's really simple. It just comes down to, hey, like here's an expressed heads up that is optional. And if you do give me your phone number, this is what I'm going to do with it and how often you're going to receive messages from me. It's really that straightforward. And then you don't have to worry about the legal repercussions from it. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. But I think the main positive too is that it helps cut down and combat spam. So like email, while there has been a lot of change in email, it still runs rampant. You know what I mean? It's really, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people, you won't hear them talk about it, but behind the scenes when unsolicited messaging gets done, it's very difficult for the legal body that's involved, whether it's FTC, et cetera, class action lawyers, subpoena, the whole 9 yards. It's very hard to follow it back through the carriers back to the originator of the message. And that's been a major problem over years and years and years. That's also one of the reasons why email is so hard to enforce. It's really difficult to track people back on email to the originator and hold people accountable. Versus text marketing, it's definitely a lot easier, but there has been difficulties over the years. But they've done quite a good job, the carriers, of changing policies, getting people to now register for their numbers, and so on. But that's really probably the most important thing just to keep in mind when it comes to text marketing and starting a list, is just making sure that you get proper consent.
Which definitely guarantees a better experience for the customer, correct? Because they're not having to worry about these unsolicited messages that we all experience daily, if not every minute, on our email inbox, right? I think one thing to hone in on is we've all used tools like ZoomInfo, Apollo.ai, Seamless. There's none of that going on with text marketing. You just can't. So that's the biggest distinction between email marketing and text marketing, is that acquisition, that subscriber acquisition piece, which we'll jump into here. It's got to be much more formalized. You can't piggyback off of other software opportunities or purchasing lists and stuff like that. That opt-in piece has to be done, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, cool. I think a lot of businesses, they want to cut corners. They want to go from point A to point B faster. And they're reluctant to want to take the time just to like get proper consent. So I think that's how most of these bad scenarios that you're going to see in the news happen. It's that, or honestly, just like, I would say like, not necessarily like intentional, but like they're just negligent with the whole process. Like they don't take the time, and who they might be partnering with to send the text, they may not educate them. So then they just get on a platform, upload a list. They had no idea, and they just send it out. And then someone reports it, and then it goes from there. So,
yeah, and I think we mentioned this on a previous episode, but a good transition back into this is it highlights the difference in use cases between email marketing and text marketing, where email marketing is more cold prospecting, and text marketing, because of these regulations and because of the need of an opt-in, is really to engage with your current clients, current customers, new customers, people that are already doing business with you. That's the point, is to provide and improve value, increase value with current customers, whereas email is net new.
Yeah. I mean, besides the legal thing too, I just think it's important businesses just to think about, like, you don't want to piss off your customers. Like their cell phone is personal, it's exclusive. If you just start sending them text messages, like not only are you, jeopardizing yourself legally, but like you're just pissing off your customers and eliminating future business from them. You know what I mean? Just to put it straightforward. So it's worth taking the time to grow your list the right way, because then you have people that actually want to get your messages, actually are going to take action and redeem your offers, versus just blasting out, praying it doesn't cause issues, and then pissing people off.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's something we talk about a lot here on the podcast, and we will continue to talk about, is that high quality customer experience through all the different marketing channels that you have. And you also, this is the key part of getting the full benefit of the incredible performance metrics that come with SMS and text marketing is the fact that if they are opted into and they are an engaged list, you will outperform statistically pretty much every other channel. But if you're spamming people, it's not going to perform, and you're putting yourself in a sticky situation. So like there's a lot of pros over the against the cons kind of things in this.
Yeah, of course. Cool. All right. So next thing I think we should jump into is, all right, this list thing makes sense. Text marketing sounds great. I'm interested. I don't have a list. I have 0 people in my subscriber list. What do I do? Let's talk from a general standpoint, and then we'll dive into 2 buckets just to preface the question. We'll go into brick and mortar model, right? Restaurants, bars, physical stores, and then we'll go more into the storefront, online storefront, e-com, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I usually talk to businesses, and I'll tell them to view it from like really 2 to 3 main steps of this. Like step 1 is just to identify where you have the utmost confidence in getting the most eyeballs on your business. So that's the first part of figuring out how to grow your list. Is just you already have a running business, you're doing well, you're probably already doing marketing, et cetera. And it's just a matter of where you think or where you have confidence in you having the most eyeballs, because that's essentially going to take me to step number 2, which is then depending on what type of placement or location that you have those eyeballs, is what type of quote growth tool do we insert there to funnel people in to opt into your text list, right? So step 1 is just where you get the most eyeballs. Step 2 is then matching the right growth tool to easily plug into that placement and get people to opt in. There's really 2 to 3 main ways, or I'll call it tools, to get people into your text list. The first one, which is the most common, and this has been around for years and years, is what we call text to join keywords. All you're doing is telling someone on an advertisement, whether it's brick and mortar or it's online on a website, to manually text a keyword to a phone number to opt in and receive text from you. So for example, text join to 833, et cetera, et cetera. So that could be placed really anywhere. Another good option too, more for physical storefronts, would be a QR code. So with a QR code, once you scan the phone, it auto opens your text messaging app, has your keyword pre-filled and your number, everything. It's basically a 2-tap sign up, really seamless. And then the other thing is mainly for online, which is either clicking a link and doing that same action, or something like a form. I mean, forms you could have in person, just that would be a pain in the butt. I would never tell someone to take old school forms like they used to. If you're going to do forms, do it online where they opt in. So that's really step 1 and step 2, is just where you get the most eyeballs, and then what tool makes most sense for that placement. And then the last step is the incentive. And this is arguably probably the most important part of the process. So if you do not have an incentive to get people to take out their phone and scan it or text or click a button, it doesn't matter what channel or tool that you use. There's usually 3 main incentives that I'll talk with the business on. And it all depends on their preference as a business. Some are discount heavy, some are brand recognition heavy. It just depends on where you're at in a business. One of the 3 that I'm going to tell you isn't necessarily better than the next. It all just depends on your brand, your connection with your customers, and so on. So the first one, which is most common, you're going to see is some type of discount. Whether it's a 10% off, 15, 20%, doesn't necessarily matter. It could be off your next order, a single item, so on. Option 2, which is also really popular, is sweepstakes. I've seen a major shift. A lot of brands have been using sweepstakes as an incentive to get people to opt in, because people love the opportunity to win something for free. It's really easy to get people to opt in because it's like eye candy. Like, hey, for your chance to win a car or something crazy like that, or a getaway trip, or even like a $500 gift card for my business, give me your phone number. That's a really easy ask, just like the incentive is. With a discount. And then the last option, which I want to say is, I'm starting to see more brands start to do this too, because it seems like there's a little bit of shift in wanting to discount and preserve revenue and so on. And it's just treating it more as an exclusive thing. So an example, by you signing up to get my text, you're going to be the first to hear about XYZ, or you're only going to get this information here. You're not going to get it from me via email, and so on.
You're basically offering access, keyword access.
Yep. Yeah, exclusivity, limited, so on. You're only going to get it via text. So those are really the 3 main options. Like I said, the discount, Anything from a monetary value, percentage off, even a free appetizer, so on, to the sweepstakes or giveaway. Again, it can be small or big. And the last one is just exclusivity, giving them the content or whatever you want to get to them only via text or given to them first. So like Black Friday's coming up. We're only going to send out this content or this deal for Black Friday to our text list. So things like that.
Or first to know about our event coming up, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of a brand that I love that just recently launched text marketing. That's how they went through that. It was a limited edition shirt that they launched, and the only way to get it was to opt in via text. They had a large social media following, so that's where they unveiled the SMS process. They've had some hits or misses in their strategy since then, but the way to get people in it was like really quick. I bet they got a ton of people to jump in.
Did they get you?
Did they get me? I mean, I opted in and bought the shirt, so it worked.
Works, people. Sweet. So moving along, the natural progression would be into, let's do physical store first. Best locations. So let's do like a quick hierarchy session. What's the best locations from experience you've seen between, we'll just stick to restaurants, bars, physical stores, apparel, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's really only 2 to 3 main places, I think, storefront, like inside, whether it's a restaurant, it's retail. Number one probably is going to be tabletop flyer. So just putting on a QR code or instruction on how to text to join. So that's definitely wickedly popular. And then any bigger print signage. So from like the menus up to like anything on the windows, anything else that's big and clearly visible. Usually the tabletop flyers are what most businesses go with. Just because there's more people seeing it versus some of the signage in store. Like they may not see that stuff. And then the last thing is really a checkout experience. So again, you typically could have a tabletop there, or what I see a lot too is the digital kiosk. So as you're checking out, either a step in the checkout process, or maybe there's a separate like iPad that people can opt in on, just entering your phone number there. I usually recommend going with the QR code or telling people to text to join, just because that protects you the most from a quote legal perspective, because that's them clearly opting in with their own device versus someone potentially botching and putting in the wrong phone number. Not necessarily that you get in trouble for those scenarios, but again, just to avoid any type of potential headaches and to be safe. So usually tabletop flyers are best. And it's just a matter of QR code or text to join keyword. QR codes I've been talking more and more about, and there's a lot more buzz around it. I think just back to the Coinbase Super Bowl commercial last year. QR codes seem to be back like wildfire. So they're really easy to plug in, people to scan to tap to join.
And guys, we might be able to attach an example in some way, but I don't want to speak too soon. But I challenge you. This QR code thing is really cool. Like, you don't just scan it and it goes to a landing page. Like, you scan it and it physically pulls up your message app. It pre-types in the number and then pre-fills the keyword. Like, it's already set. All you have to do is scan it and then press send. It's really awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So that covers brick and mortar. Let's go into e-com focus, website heavy brands.
Yeah, this one's definitely a lot to unpack. So we'll keep this pretty simple. There's a lot of different places and tactics that you can do to grow your list with a website or landing pages. I think the simplest one where you're going to get the most eyeballs is just going to be a simple welcome pop-up. So every single visitor that hits your website, you can set up a welcome pop-up. And then you really have 2 options. You either do the form method where you ask someone to fill in the phone number, just like what they're used to with email, or that same technology that we're talking about with the QR codes where you basically scan it and it auto does it. There's this thing called an opt-in link that does that exact same functionality for SMS marketing. So once you click a button, click an image, whatever's clickable, it does that same function as the QR code, which is really cool. So you just map it to a button and say, hey, to get 15% off for your welcome offer, click here, and then it does that for you.
It's a question there. If I'm on a Mac and I have my messaging attached to through my MacBook and I click on that, will it pull through to my messaging app?
Yeah, you can. That's the other thing too, is a lot of this type of technology too has device recognition. So it can detect if you're on a laptop, if text messaging is enabled and if that's an app available or not. So like me right now, I'm just on like a normal Windows computer. Like I don't have a text messaging app on here. It can detect that. And then instead of it's trying to do that opt-in process automatically, it'll just display instructions. Like it'll have text to join keyword explained, and then also a QR code. So again, most people, if they're on a desktop, which is, again, you guys know probably what the traffic looks like now. I think most of it's predominantly on mobile anyways. It's really not a big concern, I think, nowadays on displaying for both desktop and then also mobile.
Sweet. Cool. I think that covers it. Next would be, what are the common mistakes that we're seeing when people are trying to grow their list? Because I think, guys, this is the foundation. The success of your text marketing campaigns, the success of the vehicle in general, is specifically and directly related to your list. Not only to the size of it, but the segmentation, which we'll get into. So this is really important. So what are the biggest mistakes we're seeing, the most common mistakes when people are trying to grow their list from scratch? Or maybe they're at a 500 person list and they want it to get to 10,000.
Yeah, I think first off, I just go back to incentive. A lot of people, I think, don't have a good incentive to get people to want to opt in the first place. So that's typically the number one driver why people don't opt in, or they see very little list growth over a period of time. The second thing is, past the incentive, is just where you're actually displaying them to opt in, right? So again, if your website, for example, doesn't get a lot of traffic, don't expect to have a lot of list growth. And vice versa, if you have your tabletop flyer or something in store where it's not visible and every single person that comes by sees it, those are telltale signs on why you're not experiencing the list growth that you want. I think the other thing that attributes to a big mistake is a set it and forget it mentality. So they'll come up with the list growth tool, they'll set it up, the one-time incentive, and they'll just leave it for like ever. And they won't think about testing other placements and changing up the incentive and the offer. So then next thing you know, 6 months go by, and over the first month or two, you see a lot of list growth, and all of a sudden you see it like basically plateau and like fall off because it's the exact same offer over an extended period of time. So those are really, I want to say, the common mistakes that we'll typically see as we're auditing or we're talking to businesses that are using texting.
Outside of the spam stuff we talked about earlier, which is really important to stay away from. I did like that you used offer in place of incentive as well. For people listening, it's the same thing, right? It's creating a valuable offer, a value add. If you put yourself in the shoes of the end customer, what would incentivize you? What type of offer would drive you to join your own text campaign? What kind of stuff do you think in your particular area, in your particular industry, is really going to provide value to them? Because it's value exchange. Everything we do is about value exchange.
Yeah, and it's true too. Like, this is stuff you're already thinking about, right? You're thinking about your quarterly promos. You're thinking about your monthly specials, your weekly specials, depending on what kind of business you have, of course. But this is stuff you're constantly thinking about, and this is just unlocking another channel. It's another opportunity, a more personalized, more direct interaction. Like we'll scream from the rooftops, of course, in this podcast. Is it like you'll send the same promo out via your email, and they might see it and they might open it, they might come in when you could text it to them. So like there's just, again, it's the value of the channel itself, and just leveraging it for all it's worth, like we do with email and other things like social and all that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So I have a list, but it's not opted in. What's the best way to handle that?
Great question. It's scenario based. So if you have a list and they opt in for email, you can just send out an email promoting your new VIP text club. Right? So get exclusive offers here, get this incentive for your chance to win, blah blah blah, via email, and then click here to join, or text the keyword, scan it with your phone, type of ordeal. So if you have their email, you can use that as a tool to funnel people up into your text club. Cool. If you just have a list of phone numbers and they did not opt in, again, we can't give you legal advice, but I would highly advise you against taking that list and uploading it in anywhere and trying to send out texts, because that technically is unsolicited text messaging by definition per TCPA. So I would highly advise against it. But again, you are your own person, and we can't tell you what or what not to do. We can just give friendly advice.
With
TCPA,
that
of
piece,
course, is legal.
To jump in there, especially the ecom folks out there. If your site's built on Shopify or has Shop Pay plugged in, where I get text messages for my shop, like my shipping updates and stuff, that is different than your marketing because correct.
Yeah, correct. Transactional, two-factor authentication, like shipment notification, all that stuff is a completely different opt-in process. So a lot of them, they'll have there that they clearly define that by you giving your phone number at checkout, like you're only getting it for like an issue with your billing where we need to contact you or something like shipping notification, but not sending you marketing messages.
Cool.
So yeah, that's one thing, especially for e-commerce retailers to tread very cautiously with, is what your checkout page and workflow looks like, and how you're using phone numbers and what type of message that you're sending.
Cool.
Yeah, you talked about leveraging email list to switch them over. I think that is a great thing to keep in mind. It's the quickest way to grow a list if you have a substantial email list. I do think it's important, and Tanner, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, is upfront defining what they can expect. What are the expectations from here on out that I'll expect to receive via email versus what I'll start to receive via text? Really manage those expectations, being transparent upfront in that message is really important.
Yeah. And again, it all just starts with when you first hit where you can opt in, displaying those T's and C's, like giving them the upfront expectation of what type of messages you're getting, how frequently messages apply, reply help for help stop to end, like that simple. Because again, if you tell someone you're going to send them completely different messages, that's borderline not okay. And then it's also going to piss them off. They're probably going to unsubscribe. They're going to be less engaged, so on. So it's better just to be upfront, cover your full basis on any messages you might send, just to avoid any headaches, or poor customer experiences and so on.
Sweet. Cool. All right. So to wrap this thing up, this is a lot to think about. This is a lot to go through. And like I said, it's really foundational. So if you need to listen to this a couple times, feel free. Tanner, what do you recommend is kind of the number one thing that they should really start with? What's the key focus here in terms of subscriber list?
Yeah, I mean, just follow that 3-step process. Come up with a good offer, good incentive. Identify where you think you get the most eyeballs. So again, whether it's in store or maybe it's online on the website, and just take whatever growth tool makes most sense for where that placement is going to be, and just set it up one time. And measure it and see if you get people to bite. If not, then iterate, test something new. Maybe it's a different offer. Maybe you got to put it somewhere else and see if that works. But again, I would just start small, follow the 3-step process, get a tool set up one time and one placement at least to start, and start growing your list. Because time is of the essence. The longer you wait, you're just missing out on subscribers, an opportunity to connect with them right on their phones.
Yeah. And from a marketing perspective, Joel, you can hop in here as well. If we're trying to isolate variables, since there's 3 things we just talked about, I think the number one to play around with first is the offer. If you're not getting people to bite, just continue to refine that offer. There's only a couple places that make sense to kind of put these up. And so you can play around with that, but that seems to be the last resort. I think playing with that offer and finding something that really speaks to your customer, your consumer, is the best way to start to refine that process.
Yeah, I would encourage you to, as you're testing offers, to see the validity and the success of the offer so you can isolate that variable, right? Is try it across multiple channels, right? Run it, do a QR code at your checkout, either digitally or physically in person, with the offer of 10% off or whatever, and post about it on social and send it out in an email and see if the offer sticks or not, because someone comes with their email and say, hey, I got this, can I get the discount? Things like that. So you can kind of realize and isolate whether or not it's the placement or the offer, or the keyword that you're using. But yeah, no, it's a great chance to grow your list and just engage your customers better. We're gonna again keep saying that till the end of times here on the Let's Get Techy podcast. So so another foundational episode for us here. at the Let's Get Texty podcast. Just making sure you guys have your bases covered so you understand what you're doing, what you're jumping into. You could truly evaluate text marketing as a new marketing channel to engage your customers. If you got questions and you want to know more about compliance, that's a really big topic. We brought up the word legal a lot in this episode. Check out the link below to one of our knowledge base articles. We'll dive into the nitty gritty of all of the things that are compliance. And Russell, feel free to reach out if you've got questions. We've got the godfather of text marketing here on the podcast who's happy to answer any questions you've got. Or if you stayed up late at night, reach out to all of us, any of us and all of us here. And until next time, stay texty. See ya.
See you guys.
Later.